You've been told you're too much, too emotional, too intense, too sensitive, too needy, and somewhere along the way, you started believing it. You started shrinking, softening your opinions, holding back your excitement, apologizing for how you feel before anyone even asked you to. But here's the strange part. At the same time, underneath all that shrinking, there's this other voice, a quieter one. One that whispers, you're not enough, not interesting enough, not lovable enough, not worthy of the space you're taking up. Too much and never enough at the same time. If you've ever been caught between those two feelings, constantly adjusting who you are, never quite finding the version of yourself that feels acceptable, this video is going to explain what's really going on and why it's not your fault. This feeling has a shape, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. In social situations, you monitor yourself constantly. You said something enthusiastic. Was that too much? You shared something personal. Did you overshare? You got excited about an idea. Are people judging you for being too intense? So you pull back. You become quieter, more careful. You start filtering everything before it leaves your mouth. But then the other side kicks in. Now you're too quiet, too withdrawn, too boring. You're not contributing enough. People are probably wondering why you're even here. So you adjust again. You try to find the middle, that perfect, acceptable version of yourself. Not too much, not too little, just right. But that version doesn't exist because the problem was never your volume. The problem is that at some point you learned that who you are, unfiltered, unedited, is fundamentally wrong. And that belief didn't come from nowhere. The too much, never enough pattern almost always traces back to one thing: conditional acceptance. This is what happens when the love or approval you received as a child was tied to how you behaved, not who you were. Maybe your parents only responded warmly when you were calm, quiet, and easy. Maybe showing strong emotions, anger, sadness, even excitement, was met with withdrawal, criticism, or the silent treatment. Maybe you were told directly, stop being so dramatic, you're overreacting, why can't you just be normal? What your brain learned from that wasn't, I should behave differently in this moment. It learned something much deeper. The real me is a problem. I need to perform a version of myself that is acceptable to others. Psychologist Carl Rogers called this the difference between conditional and unconditional positive regard. When a child only receives love and approval under certain conditions, they develop what Rogers called conditions of worth. Internal rules about who they must be in order to deserve connection. I must be easy. I must not need too much. I must not take up too much space. These aren't thoughts you consciously choose. They become the water you swim in. They shape every interaction, every relationship, every decision about how much of yourself to show. And here's where it gets painful. The more you perform, the more disconnected you feel from the people around you. Because the version they're accepting, the filtered, edited, carefully managed version, isn't really you. So even when people like you, it doesn't land. It doesn't feel real. Because somewhere inside, they don't actually know me. If they did, they'd leave. This is what researcher Brené Brown describes as the difference between belonging and fitting in. Fitting in is about assessing a group and becoming who you need to be accepted. Belonging is showing up as you are and being accepted anyway. People stuck in the too much, never enough cycle are almost always fitting in, never belonging. This pattern doesn't stay abstract. It shapes your daily life in very specific ways. In relationships, you become a chameleon. You mirror the other person's energy, preferences, even opinions, because showing your own feels too risky. And when a relationship ends, you're left wondering, did they even know who I was? At work, you either overperform to prove your worth, staying late, saying yes to everything, burning yourself out, or you hold back, terrified that if you speak up, people will see you as too aggressive, too ambitious, too much. In friendships, you become the listener, the one who's always available, always supportive, but rarely shares what's actually going on with them. Because what if your problems are too heavy? What if your needs push people away? And socially, you develop a constant internal commentary, a running evaluation of everything you say and do, measured against an impossible standard that you can never quite meet. The exhaustion that comes from this isn't physical, it's the exhaustion of never being off, of performing yourself every single day, in every single room, for every single person. Undoing this pattern starts with one uncomfortable truth. You cannot think your way out of it. You have to experience your way out. That means the work isn't about convincing yourself you're enough. It's about slowly, deliberately letting yourself be seen and tolerating what happens next. First, notice the filter. Pay attention to the moments when you edit yourself, when you swallow a reaction, when you change your answer to match what you think someone wants to hear. You don't have to stop doing it yet, just notice it. Awareness is the first crack in the pattern. Second, practice micro-authenticity. Share one unfiltered opinion. Express one honest reaction. Say, "Actually, I don't agree," once this week. These don't have to be dramatic. They can be tiny. The point isn't the content. It's the experience of letting something real out and discovering that the world doesn't end. Third, challenge the internal narrator. When the voice says, "That was too much," ask it, "Too much for whom? Based on what evidence?" You'll often find that the standard you're measuring yourself against belongs to someone from your past, a parent, a teacher, a group that no longer has power over your life. Fourth, let people respond to the real you. This is the hardest part. When you stop performing and start showing up authentically, some people won't like it. That's not evidence that you're too much. It's information about compatibility. The people who stay when you stop editing yourself, those are your people. The ones who leave, they were never responding to you in the first place. They were responding to the performance. And fifth, separate your worth from your reception. How people respond to you is shaped by their own history, their own capacity, their own limitations. Someone finding you too much says more about their bandwidth than your value. You were never too much. You were just in rooms that were too small. You learned very early that the full version of you was a problem, that you had to shrink to be safe, tone it down to be loved, earn your place in every room you walked into. And so you built a life around managing how much of yourself to show, always adjusting, always monitoring, always caught between too much and never enough. But here's what I want you to sit with today. The people who told you that you were too much, they were telling you about their capacity, not your worth. You were never the problem. If this resonated, leave a comment. Tell me which side hits harder for you. Feeling like too much or feeling like never enough? Subscribe to SelfRevealed if you want to keep uncovering the patterns that shape your life. Every video, we go a little deeper. And if you want to take this further, we've created a 14-day workbook that walks you through exactly what we talked about today. It's called the Self-Worth Reset. One exercise a day to help you notice the filter, question the labels, and start showing up as yourself. The link is in the description. I'll see you in the next one.